Yeah, this is.
That's, please, Sergeant.
Yeah, see, Francis is out of the tournament. You're right. I thought this was their tournament.
Fire
Senior
resignation, and I see Kelly Thiebert announced.
Evan has his last game tonight.
Two,
For,
three, and
playing JV.
what?
From the Detective Bureau,
I have to
retirement,
abstain.
Darlene's retirement.
Why? Oh, because that's your
This is on my
building.
nephew's. The license is
Well,
my
you're not
nephew's.
gonna
Better than
abstain
this.
anyway.
Never a good idea.
How many
I
questions?
think that when you don't object, it's a vote, is it?
No,
Trying to hit it.
I'm just gonna
Make
instruct the
contact.
clerk tomorrow that we don't need a hearing.
He's.
Tina.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's all. This is all.
That's all it is.
Is there a vote on this?
Not
I
on
mean,
the liquor permit.
On the liquor permit?
No,
Oh, just move in a second.
that's all it is.
It's on my nephew's name. Do I abstain to it?
Well,
You just don't do anything.
You don't
It's
do
all I
anything.
need to move in a second.
Oh, that's it? Okay.
yeah, I'll do it and then Dennis
All
will
right.
probably second.
That way you're not on the record.
And
All right.
then
Okay.
So you just shut up.
250.
No, I don't know. No, I don't know. Because we never ever had a hearing on
And
it.
I could be.
No, we've never had one.
Yeah.
Well,
July.
So this.
Good evening. Welcome to the Oregon City Council regular meeting for May 23rd, 2022. And the time is now 7:04. Let us open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call of council, please?
Mr. Davish?
Here.
Mr. Drake?
Here.
Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Pollock?
Here,
Mr. Reeves? Mr. Wallenzeck?
Here.
Mr. Zale?
Here. Council, Mr. Reeves was called away for something he had to do with his job. He may show up later, but he could not be here at the start of the meeting. Can I get a motion to excuse Mr. Reeves from the meeting?
Mr.
tonight?
President,
Mr. Davish.
I move to excuse Cherry Reeves from tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Also present at tonight's meeting are Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Michael Beasley, Clerk of Council Tina Evans, Law Director Melissa Pecora, Chief of Police Brandon Began, Assistant Fire Chief Jim Wolf. Council, Council, we need to approve the meeting minutes from the last regular meeting, May 9th, 2022. Can I get a motion? Mr. Horniak.
I move to approve the minutes of the May 9th, 2022 regular meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallenzeck.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Wallenzeck. Meeting minutes will be approved for May 9th, 2022. Council, the first order of business tonight will be a public hearing. It is an application for an SEU 175-2022 for a special use in R2 medium density residential district for the purpose of having up to 6 chickens, hens only, on the property described as parcel number 44-23-687. The applicant owners are Christopher Antu and Nicole Vandegeller. I'm sorry. The location is 3026 Pickle Road. I will open the public hearing at 7:07. And I will ask if there's anybody here to speak in favor of this SUE.
Mr. President.
Yes, is there anything you'd like to?
Before that,
Go ahead.
usually Mr. Gilmore gives a little synopsis of what happened there or why we are here. And in his absence, he is ill and he is not here today. I'll take a shot at that because this came before the Planning Commission with for the request. The request was granted. And if you see on her property, there's a blue outline box. The chickens can range or can be anywhere but in the box. And then the the 6 hens were approved with that condition. So now you can go with the proponents, which she is.
Nicole, would you like to say a few words? Pardon me? Yeah, just
You
go
don't
on.
have to say anything.
State your name and your address.
Nicole Van Gelder, 3026 Pickle Road, Oregon, Ohio, 43616. And I'm just here to have hens. So,
Mr. President.
are there any questions? Yes.
Council, you have any questions? Sir?
I couldn't hear what she said.
Oh. Nicole Van Gelder at 3026 Pickle Road. And I'm just here to apply for up to 6 hens.
Thank you.
Are there questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Walenzak?
thank you. Thank you for coming before us today. I do have a question. I know in the designated box that the mayor spoke, you are not allowed to put them. Are you planning on putting these in a coop or just free range? What are your plans with the storage of them?
My submission
housing.
was to be able to just house them anywhere on that acreage other than the blue parcel. I
Do you
do
have any
have a
idea?
barn. I was open for suggestions. And I had wanted to be able to still put them in individual carts and possibly take
Mm-hmm.
them back to the YMCA because I'd like to work with a YMCA, which is in the back of my 5
Mhm.
acres, as like a community type of thing, and maybe have a community garden later on and teach projects like that and bring the chickens also and talk about proper manure and proper feeding and proper composting, all that, and
Excellent.
growing. So that's
Thank
my
you.
goal.
And the reason I asked that, my concern is, there's the development going in across the street from you.
I would like to have them in like a cage inside
Okay,
of my
that's what I was just
barn
wondering.
at
if-
nighttime
yeah,
especially.
And if there's a dog park, I didn't want their
Oh.
chance of. So that was my concern, if they were gonna be free range or if it's stored. or
I want
housed.
them, even if they're going to be out, it would be very
Okay.
monitored
Okay.
and not free range to just go.
Understand. Thank you for,
They're egg laying chickens is what I'd like
Yep.
to have them for.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walenzak. Council, are there any other questions? Comments?
Yeah, she just
Mr. Horniak.
answered the one I was going to ask, why did you want to have the chickens onto the property? And you're saying for the egg production and
Egg production.
perhaps some educational
and some
use
educational.
with why.
Yeah, and
Oh.
I have 2 daughters, myself, and then Christopher has 2 as well. They're older, but still it's just an experience. And then his sister does baking, so it's not going to be a problem getting rid of up to 6 hen eggs a year, all the eggs.
The border of the property, which I'm assuming is what we're showing here in red,
Mhm.
is that fenced?
It is over on the YMCA side, which is on, if you're looking at the picture, that would be the west, is that the
It's the west
west
side.
side? And underneath the yellow over there, that's the YMCA's yard. And then the one where it's red on the east side, there we are. That is not fenced. The one in the house that's up in between the 2 back houses up front, that one is all, their backyard is all fenced.
Okay, but the longer side on the east side of that property is not.
Correct.
Okay.
And I don't believe many of the others are, which is why I had random
Okay.
couple of neighbors' dogs coming over and
Well,
visiting. And it's
that-
like-
That's the part of my question is how do
Yeah.
you make sure that the chickens are staying on your property and that no animals are coming in for your chickens through a non-fenced area?
I would have them inside my barn at nighttime and then they would be with me. Even the mobile chicken houses that are on wheels that I could carry, I would have probably a singular chicken with me and they are all fenced in. They have a hen house and then they have a little free range. It's almost like a wheelbarrow for a hen house chicken and you can take it wherever. So none of them are ever going to have just going around. I'm going to have it fenced in above and beside. in all areas.
Okay, fair enough. My last question is probably more for the mayor, as a member of this committee that went through. The area that was called out in blue, where the chickens could not be, what was the rationale to that?
That was due to a complaint from a neighbor. The neighbor
Compromise.
had a problem because that's where their dog is. They thought the dog tends to be hard to keep from barking. They thought that if the chickens were ranging in that area, that would cause a disruption. And as she stated, she planned to have different ways to control where the chickens were able to go to not go in there. So if they were just free range, there was like no magic line that the chickens could cross, that she said she would either have them contained in units or be with the chickens when they were loose. That was the best way we could put in a condition right there by drawing it, because we didn't have dimensions at the time. And the applicant and the neighbor that was in objection to where they could go were happy with that.
May I add-
Go ahead, please.
You gotta go.
Thank you, Ms. Horniak.
May I
Please.
add? My neighbor also, before I had come to that meeting on May 9th, they have an invisible dog fence line. So they have two labs. The house in the other picture that's on the right side of the blue box, that's their home. They have dogs that run all around back there too. That's a invisible fence. And I myself have dogs as well that have an invisible fence. So I keep a lot of traffic, or I would say probably, at least it prevents coyotes or things like that from coming on, because I have a chow, I have another chow, and I have two Shih Tzus. And,
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. President.
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I do have a question, and this might be to the mayor since he is on the plan commission. I know since no one's here to speak against, I don't think, but was there any on the record during that plan commission meeting that were against it, or do you have any petitions from your neighbors or anyone?
Mr. President,
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
and of course, I was at the planning commission meeting, and I'm a member of the planning commission meeting. The only one who expressed any concern that was there was her adjacent neighbor, and their concerns were just directed to that prohibited area in the blue box.
Okay.
After that, I would say if in fairness, they would probably rather not see chickens versus chickens, but they said if that could be incorporated, they could live with that.
And
that
that
was-
will be a part of the SUE?
That definitely
Yes,
is,
yes.
yes.
All right.
And there sometimes comes up questions, how conditions work with zoning changes. On actual zoning changes, it's really not proper to put a condition in, but with conditional uses and special uses, it's completely appropriate to put conditions in. So being that this is an SUE, special use exception, conditions are what it's all about.
Right.
So-
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President,
Mr. Beasley.
just a note, since a couple of council members asked, came up, we're kind of looking also, obviously, we seem to every year or so have this one is less contentious than others, fairly contentious session about chickens or no chickens, or dogs or no dogs, or whatever, but chickens more lately. Just in checking with some adjacent communities, I don't have a full update. Perrysburg a year ago expanded and now allows chickens generally. I think, I'm not sure they allow roosters, but chickens. Toledo now allows 6 hens without getting a permit anywhere. I know in my neighborhood, people have them. I know Sylvania is having conversations about it, just in terms of So long-term, among the questions that's come up that we feel like, should we put together a better system for dealing with this than the one we have? And how do we, and it's one of those issues that it is hard because it's rarely consensus on. I know that we in the administration go back and forth on them, site to site. I know council members do as well. I know our residents do as well. But there's not typically consensus on it. I feel like animals issues, it's hard to reach unanimity. Let's just put it that way. So let's just be aware of that as we look at it. And I think some of our most contentious meetings we've ever had were about peacocks, chickens, dogs, pigs. Just what it is. It's not surprising too, because I think we're still the largest city in Ohio where we have so much land being farmed, but it's something that people have difference of opinion about.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
I would just follow up with as many permit processes we've gone through with chickens. We have had next to no complaints thereafter. I think it's so either people tolerate them or hold it to themselves, but we traditionally get a lot of complaints about a lot of other things. We get complaints, over, like the dog thing was way more. Cats, we get complaints over. We get complaints, but it's rare for us to get a follow-up complaint over any of the chickens when we have issued these permits. Traditionally, it seems like the people that go after or choose to have chickens choose to have them reasonably, responsibly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here to speak against this application? Hearing none, I will assign item 094, 2022 as ordinance 94, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Excuse me, Mr. President, did you close the meeting? The
Oh,
hearing?
thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. I will, with hearing no other comments, I will close the hearing at 7:20 PM. And I will assign item 94, 2022 as ordinance 94, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read it in the record.
Authorizing a special use permit for parcel 44-23687 for property located at 3026 Pickle Road for the purpose of having up to 6 chickens, only hens, on the property in R2 medium density residential zoning district.
Council.
Mr. President,
Ms. Paula.
I move for passage of ordinance number 94 of 2022. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Paula. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenzak. Ms. Evans, will you take a vote of council, please?
Mrs. Paulo,
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes. Thank you, council. Ordinance 94, 2022 passes with 6 yeas and 0 nays. Council, before we move on to other business, because we did not have a committee of the whole meeting last week, we need to add items 94 or 95, 96, and 97 to this week's agenda. Can I get a motion to add these items, please?
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move to add items 94 through 97 to tonight's agenda.
95 through 97.
95 through 97.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Horniak. First item for consideration will be item 95, 2022, which is being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian. Yeah, Nicole, you can. Thank you. Which is being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Chief Dennis Hartman, I believe, Assistant Chief Wolf. you have information for us on this?
I'm happy to help council with any questions they may have. The information's in the back.
Is there, can you, do we have any background on this,
Yes,
Mr. Beasley?
just a note, we enter into reciprocity agreements. This is a standard agreement. There's no financial arrangement, and that's just part of the fairly typical agreements we have with neighboring communities as we work through this. And this is the Ohio Division of Forestry and our department and work for. There's no change in this to something we've done in the past.
This is just what the ODNR though, correct? This one,
Correct. The
right.
state's looking to have more accounting or more data for any wildland type fires across the state. So this is an agreement saying that we're going to provide that information. It also allows them to have more detailed information while going for federal grant monies.
Okay.
It also opens us up to some grants potentially later or down the line through the state.
Thank you, Chief. Does this ever involve us training with them with the controlled burns maybe in that state property or anything like that, or anything planned like that?
So the state and federal wildlife areas do some controlled burning. They do offer training courses throughout the state for that and will provide some of the equipment necessary. I don't see us potentially, or I don't see us actively working with them in that capacity, but if they needed support, we could definitely provide that for them.
Thank you, Chief. Council, any questions regarding this item? Hearing none, I will assign item 95, 2022 as ordinance 95, 2022 and ask Ms. Evans to read into the record.
An ordinance authorizing the City of Oregon Fire and Rescue Department to enter into a cooperative agreement with the Ohio Division of Forestry, establishing a work relationship to meet the forestry needs of the area and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Paulo.
I move for passage of ordinance 95 of 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Paulo.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll
Mr.
call vote,
President.
Council, please?
I just got a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Drake.
Is this similar to like mutual aid the police does right now?
Well,
a little different.
yes, a little bit. Yeah.
All right, that's fine. Thank you.
Ms. Evans, would you read item 95, 2022 into the record, please?
Oh, I read it.
Oh, you did. That's correct. Council, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, Council. Ordinance 95, 2022 passes with 6 yeas and 0 nays. Next item up is item 96, 2022, which is also being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Police Chief Brandon Began. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a standard contract. We've been with Superior for many years to provide all of our uniform and equipment. Our FOP Command Officer Union and the OPPA Union both get an allotment each year that they can spend on uniforms, shirts, jackets, pants, belts, boots, pretty much everything we need. This year, there was approximately a 7% increase on the contract price. Usually they have a couple percent increase. They cited due to the COVID-19 pandemic, major supply chain disruptions and high inflation were the major factors that made it a 7% increase. We are very happy with their services. It's nice to have a local uniform supply shop that we can go to. They fit us, they tailor our uniforms. And I don't really think it'd be a valid option to do anything that is mail order or out of town for that reason. We have people regularly go over there and get fitted, and they do a great job at doing that.
Thank you, Chief. I'm well aware of what their contract's like in the air. They're basically a sole supplier for us, but 7% is a little hard to swallow. That's a huge increase.
I don't disagree.
We don't have any choice on that, do
I
we?
agree.
There's no choice.
I agree.
I'd be surprised if we found better anyhow.
Pardon me?
Anything in the textile side of it, those prices are going up the same as everybody else's.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Fortunately.
Council, any questions regarding item 96? for the chief or anything, or any other comments? Mr. Wallington? No. Hearing none. I will assign item 96, 2022 as ordinance 96, 2022 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into an agreement with Superior Uniforms, 909 Phillips Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, to provide police uniforms and supplies as required by the collective bargaining agreements entered into between the police unions, OPPA and FOP in the city of Oregon.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Paula.
I move for passage of ordinance number 96 of 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Paula.
Second.
Mr. Davish? Thank you, Mr. Davish, for the second. Ms. Evans, you take a roll call vote of council.
Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzeck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 96, 2022 passes with 6 yeas and 0 nays. Next item is 97, 2022, which is also being presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Police Chief Brandon Began. I'll defer to Mr. Began again.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to explain what Achieve is, it is our juvenile diversion program. Anybody who's under the age of 17 and under, who either lives in the city of Oregon or who attends Oregon City Schools would be eligible for this program. If a juvenile was to commit a nonviolent misdemeanor offense, our officers would have the option to refer them to the juvenile diversion program. And when they do that, they get assigned to a case manager. They sign a contract, a bunch of stipulations in there depending on their needs. It's a multi-month program. And if the juvenile does complete all aspects of the contract, they would complete the program and they would not be charged through juvenile court. We think it's a great program. Renee Jardy's been with the city for coming up on her 15th year. She's the one who runs the program. She puts in 20 hours per week. So we asked for the contract for her for another year. We did ask for $1 per hour pay increase to $25 per hour. Her last increase was in 2017. And we believe that was a fair pay range for her services.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, I agree. I think Renee's done a really great job with the program throughout the years. Did you mention, or what is your current caseload right now? What's it been looking like?
So on a yearly basis, we have, in 2021, we had 33 cases that went through. Out of those 33, 30 of them successfully completed and diverted from being charged criminally for their acts.
That's a pretty average rate of amount of people that she's dealing with annually, though, correct?
Yeah, 2020 was obviously down. Crime and charging of individuals was down in 2020 due to COVID. In 2019, we had 29 cases. 2018, we had 25, and 2017, we had 34. So it's pretty average to have 25 to 35 per year.
Thank you, Chief. Council, any questions or comments regarding item 97, 2022?
Mr. President.
Mr. Horniak.
Question for the chief or for anybody who can speak to, and I don't know if we track anything like this, but with the number of years that we utilize this, and I agree it's an outstanding program for us to offer and have, are there any statistics or things that we have, those that have completed the Achieve program as far as repeat offenders and different types of things? I mean, do we track anything of that to know, have we deterred future behavior because of them taking part in this program?
Yeah, I know we do track them at least until they become an adult. Most of the offenders who come through there are aged, 13 to 17. I don't have any statistics for into adulthood once they leave the juvenile justice. I don't have any data for that. I could look into that with Renee Jardy and see if that is something that she tracks.
Just basic, and I see Mr. Beasley wanting to kind of reply with an answer. I'm going to imagine and make the assumption, very successful program. We feel pretty good about what we see coming through that.
We feel very good. There are some offenders who will come through, they'll do the diversion program, and either they don't complete everything that they need to, or they choose not to participate, or their family prefers not to participate. It's not that often where we have somebody, if they commit a crime a second time, they're not eligible for the program, unless it's a very special circumstance. So we feel pretty good about it. We have pretty good feedback from those who go through it. And the program itself, the case manager will look at the juvenile in question and come up with a multifaceted approach to helping them out. If it had something to do with maybe drug use, they can do some addiction services. They can do drug testing. There's a lot of different things, and it's tailored for each individual person and what their background is, what the crime that they committed is. So it's very tailored specifically for that. It's not just a cookie cutter program that everybody does the same thing, does some community service, and they're through it. They really try to have them work on things that will be beneficial to them, and we think that it has been in the past.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Chief Began. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
You good?
Council, any further questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 97, 2022 as ordinance 97, 2022, and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record.
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to enter into a contract with Irene Renee Jardy to act as case manager to the Juvenile Diversion Achieve program.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Paulo.
I move for passage of ordinance 97 of 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Paulo. Second by Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Ms. Evans, would you take a roll call vote, Council, please?
Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, Council. Ordinance 97, 2022 passes with 6 yeas and 0 nays. Council, the next item up, or not item, but the next discussion, or if there is any, we do have a new liquor permit for the Blend Oregon Incorporated, DBA The Blend Oregon at 406 South Wheeling Street, Unit G, Oregon, Ohio. Any questions or comments regarding that?
Mr. President,
Ms. Paula?
based on the information provided, I'm going to move for the clerk to mark the box that we don't need a hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Paula.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallensack. Thank you, Mr. Wallensack. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, we will instruct the clerk to check the box so we do not require a hearing for this particular liquor permit. With that being done, we will now move to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President and Council. I have a couple announcements to make of retirements or resignations. And the first one is from the fire department, and I ask Council's concurrence in the acceptance of the resignation of Jennifer Pardo. And it would be effective Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. And I would ask Council's concurrence in the acceptance of the resignation letter, once again, of Jennifer Pardo, May 11th, 2022.
Council.
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I move to concur with the mayor on his acceptance of the resignation of Jennifer Pardo from the fire department.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, Mayor, Council does concur with the resignation of Jennifer Pardo.
And next, from the police department, Sergeant Kelly Thiebert is announcing the retirement as effective July 8th, 2022. And I would ask Council's concurrence in the acceptance of Kelly Thiebert, Sergeant Kelly Thiebert's desires to retire once again on July 8th, 2022.
Council.
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I move to concur with the mayor's acceptance of the retirement of Detective Kelly Thiebert from the police department.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Council, are there any objections? Hearing that, hearing none, Mayor, Council does concur with accepting retirement of Detective Sergeant Kelly Thiebert.
Okay. And then from the Department of Finance, Darlene Huntermark is also announcing her retirement desire for July 8th of this year, 2022. And I'd ask council's concurrence in accepting Darlene Huntermark, Finance Director's retirement resignation effective July 8th, 2022.
Council,
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. President.
Mr. Wallensack.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to concur with the mayor's acceptance of the retirement resignation of Ms. Darlene Huntermark as Director of the Finance Department.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Wallensack. Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, Mayor, the council does concur with accepting the retirement of Darlene Huntermark.
And next, with these retirements, we got a couple of appointments to make, and that would be in the rec department. And I'd ask council's concurrence in the appointment of these two individuals to crew leader, worker 1, classification 1, grounds crew shift supervisor, classification 3, and that would be Ashton Lada and Joshua Pennington, step 3, $15.75 an hour. Effective date would be Monday, May 16th, 2022. I'm guessing they already worked a couple days, so we're gonna go a little retroactive and pay them.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move to concur with the mayor of the payroll change request for Ashton Latta and Joshua Pennington.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Council, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, Mayor, the council does go along with the payroll classification change for Ashton Latta and Joshua Penny.
I appreciate that, and I'm sure they do too. And with that, I would conclude my report.
Do we have one more?
You forgot one.
Oh, which one?
Brandon Gardell.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't in my, it was
An appointment, yeah.
yeah.
I thought you were about to do that appointment.
Yeah, this Brandon will be a,
Brandon's
I don't
going,
see him
"Wait a
out there. He should have showed up. And before I complete, I'm gonna ask council's concurrence in the promotion of Brandon Gardell to sergeant. And that would be effective July 1st, 2022. It would be at step 1 of the FOP pay range. Annual salary, $83,123.30. If anybody's interested, it's an hourly rate of $39. We ought to say $40 an hour, but it's at $39,963.31. For anybody keeping an exact check of that. And I would once again ask for council's concurrence in the promotion of Patrolman Brandon Gardell to Sergeant Brandon Gardell, once again, July 1st, 2022.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Paula.
I move to concur with the mayor's appointment promotion of Brandon Gardell to police sergeant.
Thank you, Ms. Paula. Second by Mr. Drake. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, Mayor, the council does concur with the promotion of Brandon Gardell to sergeant.
I did have it in my pack.
Mr.
Stuck
President?
to the other
Gotta
one.
give him hers back.
Mr. President, I just wanted to make a remark.
Yes, Chief.
I just wanted to make a remark. Officer Gardell is not here today because he's in quarantine. So he couldn't come in here with his family. He's very excited about the promotion. He's going to be great for the job. He's got prior military experience as a sergeant as well. So we're very excited for him. We're very excited for Kelly Thiebert and her retirement. She's put a lot of years in, has done many positions out here. We're very pleased with what we've had with her. It's going to be a big loss with her leaving, but we're excited for her retirement. She deserves it.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Beasley.
Mr. President, I just got a few notes. One, I think there's been some concern that since Brandon became chief, too many people named Brandon have been promoted, but I won't go into that, see that conflict. I will note just last week, we had, I thought, a really nice stakeholders meeting with looking at the next round of Navarre Avenue improvements. I know Councilman Davish was there, Councilman Drake was there, and we felt, I think people had a good give and take on it, and we had some good positive feedback on it. Another thing worth noting, a while back, the council voted to accept, enter in an opioid settlement. And we are working on, there's going to be, there's two different entities going to be established. One is a statewide board, and I am the interim representative to the, as Lucas County's representative, representing all the subdivisions on that. Is my hope to be out of that gig within a couple of weeks. Among the things we're doing is that Wednesday morning, we're doing a Zoom meeting. The townships have a really nice structure where they have a township trustees associations. They automatically designate their reps. The cities don't have as organized a system, but so we're going to do a little Zoom meeting and try and figure out a way to get a rep. We're looking, the likeliest thing is trying to find someone from the industry to be the rep, someone who's in drug rehab or other things. This board isn't about divvying up funds to subdivisions. This board is about ruling long-term on programming. If there's future opioid settlement dollars that come in, this entity will make recommendations to the state on how those services can be provided locally, whether it be rehab or prevention in those categories generally. So if any council members have anyone who works in that sector that you think could be a good representative on that, let us know those thoughts. All right. But we're going to have a little Zoom meeting on that this week. We had some other good news. We've been working in Paul's shop and administration, mayor's office, and working with Pogemeyer to get our EDA grant expanded to provide additional water and sewer further south on Wynn Road. And we got an approval on that. Was it about 600, the last one expansion?
Yeah.
About $600,000 expansion of our grant. So that's really a nice, successful grant that is going to have very little local match for making it easier to provide services over in industrial spaces. We got that word on Thursday afternoon last week. Another one that we need some ideas on that we're going to ask Melissa to comment is on fireworks. Ohio law has changed on personal possession of fireworks. Each community has to decide by, I'm not sure for all time, but we have a window that opens and closes between now and the end of June. All right, so I'm going to ask Melissa to comment on that so that council can decide if we want to do legislation in June that deals with this or don't. But if you want to let us know our choices, this is something that's going to come up that's out there for us.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Ms. Purpura.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 172 amended section 3743.45 of the Ohio Revised Code. The Ohio Revised Code limited personal possession, as Mr. Beasley had stated, of fireworks, of the 1.4 G fireworks. I had to look what that was because I'm probably saying it wrong, but it's your firecrackers and bottle rockets, and it limits it only to the individuals who sell it. Previously in Ohio, everyone was prohibited from possessing and discharging. So House Bill 172 now puts it to the communities, the municipalities, to enact their own home rule to say whether they want to prohibit it entirely as it was before, or do you want to limit it to certain holidays, days and times. But we have to, if we want to prohibit it or put some limitation on it, we have to enact it legislation by June 30th due to the fact that it goes in effect July 1st.
So
Thank you, Mr. Purpura. Mr. Purpura, regarding this, is there any feeling at all yet on how communities that neighbor us would probably react to this?
The surrounding communities around us, I have not reached out to. I can definitely do that and report back to council. I can tell you that several communities in the state of Ohio have chose to prohibit it. That being like Rocky River, Lakewood, Bellevue, Bexley, Oberlin, Grandview Heights. There are several around the state.
I'm interested in the Lucas County area, basically, and what I think the cities would say. Also, on a second note, if we were to redo our own legislation on this, would we have the ability in this legislation to prohibit the sale of fireworks in this city? Not just the use of them, but the sale of them?
No, it would be specifically towards the
So-
possession in the discharge.
So it would stay the same as it is now,
Correct.
as it currently, I guess, as it was.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
One of the things that we thought might be, or, this is a thing that a lot of cities are just learning, we're all just trying to reacting to this just change in law, and a lot of cities are gonna be deciding over the next 35 days or so. Might be if we'll leave it up, but we could, if we want to have a public safety meeting and just kind of review our options and present, we can draft some legislation or leave it alone. Let's face it, we all know that people, even though it is not necessarily legal, that around 4th of July, our residents shoot off fireworks. And we all know that the police, the only rational response is police kind of say, hey, if they're too noisy and too disruptive, they tell them to knock it off. I mean, that's been life. I mean, you lived it and we've all lived it. We don't know the answer. This is really a legislative question. We will get a sense from our surrounding communities about what their plan is, and get that back to us. But maybe our last council meeting in June, we have a committee hearing and decide if we want to do nothing or something. And the window of time is something that some communities I know are thinking about. So
Yes.
that it's just one of the things that on the table that, all right, 4 days on either side or something like that, that allows it to move on. But other communities are saying, hey, the Ohio laws changed, let people do what they want. So it's something that's a decision that's out there for us. It's up to the council.
Mr. Beasley, just say, I think I'm correct in saying this to council, because we've seen laws like this come up in the past. We have this window. If we refuse to act on this window, we could never revisit it. We're stuck with what we have.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Unless the legislature acts again.
Right.
But that's the way this one is written.
Right.
I was surprised by the way it came out.
Mr. Mayor.
Get Melissa a little nervous on this because I'm going to go way out on the limb here. If we either do something or do nothing, I think the results are probably pretty much going to be the same. Probably. Sorry, I went way out there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, the only thing I'll note, and I agree with the mayor, the only thing that's nice is on occasion, the police have the discretion to do something or to not do something. If I'm really out of hand, just having the police have a tool to tell me to knock it off is sometimes nice. But
We still have that.
we still have that. Well, it's harder.
Harder.
I don't know, I've known people who shot off fireworks on 4th of July myself.
The bottle rockets in the class you're talking about.
The problem is the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th
Yes.
at 4 a.m. That's the problem. But
It's hard, so.
Ms. Pepori, do you have anything more for your report?
No,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Roman.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Drake.
No report. I'd just like to comment. Saturday, May 14th, they had the Naturally Oregon Plant Exchange. I was there most of the afternoon and the morning to afternoon. And I thought it was a good success. A lot of people in and out. At one time, I know the people running it were nervous that a lot might fill up, but people kind of came and go, and I think it flowed good. And I just want to give a shout out to Cassie Tenna. I know she had a lot to do with it and ran it, and then Jennifer Kirkovic. I'm sure I hacked her name, but she was there all day, and they did a really good job. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Mr. Wallenczak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak. Mr. Davish.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Pauloff.
No report from my standing committee, but I couldn't find a parking spot tonight. And I didn't think of it negatively. I thought of it positively because there's a lot of kids out there. And that is awesome to see. That parking lot is jam-packed. So kudos to the rec department.
Thank you, Ms.
Thanks.
Pauloff. Mr. Horniak.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. And I do not have a report from my standing committee, but council, next Monday is a holiday, and it's also the 5th Monday of the month. So we will not have a council meeting next Monday. The next council meeting, the next committee, the whole meeting will be June the 6th. And with that, we have one person signed in to speak before council. Ms. Ackerman, do you want to come to the podium, please? State your name and address for the council, for record.
Beth Ackerman, 931 Beery Road, Oregon, Ohio. I apologize for my appearance. I had to load the planner to be able to come to the meeting. As you know, farming's in full swing. On that firework thing, that's not what I wanted to talk about, but isn't it a liability? Like if they open that window and say, how do you guys want to act about it? Could anybody come back after the city if you were to allow it? I mean, isn't it better if you say, yeah, you can't blow off bottle rockets and fireworks, and then if they do, then the city is not responsible for their actions? Is that how that works?
It doesn't affect our liability much.
Okay.
That's fine.
They
People
can't
can
come
always-
back on you if.
Everyone can always sue a city.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But the main thing I wanted to just say is that the birds, the biggest week is over, but the birds are still here. And I mean, I've got orchard Orioles and Baltimores and there's still a lot going on. But what I want to know is the city of Oregon really wasn't very visible in the biggest week in burning. And I was hoping that, I don't even know if there were any banners up down, maybe one on Route 2, but I know there's some situation with the turbines, and I'd hate for that to be like the sticking point of why Oregon and the biggest week aren't more partnered. So I'm just hoping and encouraging you guys that if we could do more. I mean, it is a lot of people from all over the world and a lot of revenue and, and we have opportunity to, it is an industry too. And I'm hoping that in the next year, we can find a way to promote ourselves, the city of Oregon, better and work. And even if we're not doing something directly with Black Swamp, we're totally allowed to promote birding in our own community on our own. And so I'm just a word of encouragement that I think there's a lot of people that would like to see Oregon more involved, maybe even doing some social activities and stuff for the birders while they're here. That's all. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Ackerman, I would just say this. I think for years, we've all been involved with this. I don't know what else. I understand what you're saying. I did not notice that we had our bird things up on the flagpoles this year, but you hear this and a lot of people will say, why aren't we more involved? And it gets down to like a business type of thing. And really that we don't really dabble in the business aspect of what the community gets from all these birders being here and that kind of the economics. We're not into that. There's not much we could really do that would help us out on that. And you're looking at a 2-week window for the most part on this. But I think we've always been willing to promote it. And I think a lot of people in Oregon themselves promote it because people like me have looked at the birds in Oregon area for 45 years.
Yeah,
So, I think a lot of the promotion's well done at Maumee Bay. I know the restaurants cater to all the birders that come in very, very well, but if you have a suggestion, I don't know what else we could do other than we did have our banners up. I don't know if we had them up
Mr.
this year. I
President.
didn't notice.
Mr. President,
But, Ms. Paula,
I drove down Navarre today and the banners are huge. You can't miss them when you go
for
down
the
Navarre.
birders?
For
Okay,
the
I
birders.
just
It says
didn't notice them
welcome
there.
birders.
Okay.
You can see them really good at the intersections and they are up.
Yeah, they were.
I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, they
At the beginning? It was-
I thought they were up all week. for
I
the last
didn't
2
notice
weeks.
them either early on. I didn't.
I travel
I
down
didn't, but-
Navarre quite a few
But-
times. a
I mean,
day.
that's a small part of it, but I think that it's very much like the way that you promote softball and tournaments and, you know, a lot of sporting events. I think we could take that same approach to the birding.
Well, we
community.
really don't promote it like that, but how would you?
We should.
Let me ask you this, how would we as a city promote the birding that isn't already done? I think we'd all love suggestions like that. I don't know what else we could do unless
Well,
we
in the
paid for.
next year, yeah, we'll bring some concrete ideas here, but I really think that, you know, when you look at the magazine that was put out by Black Swamp, we had 3 Oregon businesses in it. And I know it's the elephant in the room is the wind turbine thing, and I've heard both sides of it, and I really hope we can get to a place where, and I know the city says it's not us, it's the school district that's doing it, that operates the wind turbines, and I know it's a sticking point for a lot of the people in the birding community. So I'm just hoping we can all get together and resolve that to some extent where we can move forward and you know, do more social things. Like I was talking with Charlie Snyder, who was a VOAG teacher, retired from Oregon, and we were talking about maybe doing some more social activities that, you know, events that, because they come to town, they bird, and then they want evening activities. So maybe, I don't know, concerts or something that showcases our city more.
Mr. Beasley?
Yeah, that could be fun. I will say that I personally went out. I had relatives coming from out of town and went out. I did not see any pileated woodpecker, which is still my favorite. But I'm not aware of any sense. Obviously, the city doesn't. That wind turbine is a wind turbine. It's here. I'm not aware of any sense that the birds mind it particularly, or that the birders have focused on that as a source of conflict. We meet with our hotels and those, they fill up with this, obviously. Our restaurants fill up and they market. We let them do their space, those that choose to market and advertising for it. Question is, do we also try, we want to help, but we don't want to compete with the organized birding events. So if the folks, the Black Swamp folks that are putting something on, we don't want to be trying to take up their space. Is there a way that we could better partner with something that's worth looking at?
I think
Okay.
it's a misunderstanding.
We're trying not to step
because
on them as they're doing their events at the.
Black
park.
Swamp did a half-page article in the periodical that was all over town, could be picked up free all over. And one half page was about the wind turbines and birding and how they feel about it. And then there was the cities that are partnered with the biggest week in birding. It was Toledo and Oak Harbor. And it was like, I want to see Oregon on there. I want to see us have a bigger part in it. It's right there. It's right at our door, out our door. And so I'm just hoping that, and you guys are on council, you can, you know, I mean, if you don't see a revenue stream right here, it comes right to us. And I think we could do more to capitalize on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerman. Council, any other comments for the evening? Hearing none, I will move to close I will move for adjournment of tonight's meeting. Can I get a adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenzak. Second by Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned.
Just one note. Don't get and would never get any revenue from it. We don't care. We care about a community event. Yeah, we get community event. We don't, it's a community event is good for us. And we like people to have fun. But we don't care about the art. We wouldn't do it for revenue. We do it for something that's good.